The school bell cut through the air, sending a wave of movement across the yard. Ethan stepped away from the crowd, his lunchbox heavy in his hand. He walked toward the perimeter fence where the noise faded into a dull hum. Near the rusted metal bench, the activity thinned out. Noah sat there, tucked into the far corner of the seat. He was staring at the ground. His hands rested empty on his knees. Ethan slowed his pace, his sneakers crunching against the loose gravel with every step. He stopped just short of the bench, watching the way Noah held his posture. There was no movement from the boy on the bench, not even a glance toward the bustling field. Ethan looked down at his own lunchbox, then back at the silent figure. The distance between them felt like a physical weight. Ethan stood still, listening to the distant shouts of other students, waiting for a sign that did not come. The silence between them grew heavy, marking the divide between the boy with a full box and the boy with nothing at all. Ethan closed the gap, his sneakers crunching rhythmically on the dry gravel. He stopped 3 feet from the bench. Noah remained motionless, his gaze locked onto a patch of dirt near his boots. Ethan did not speak. He lowered his lunchbox to the ground with a soft thud and clicked the plastic latches open. The sound was sharp in the quiet space near the fence. He reached inside, retrieved the thick turkey sandwich, and held it with both hands. With deliberate care, he pressed his thumbs into the center and pulled the bread apart. It split into 2 even pieces. He placed one half onto the lid of his container and pushed it slowly across the bench until it rested inches from Noah's hand. Ethan straightened up, his movements steady and slow. He kept his eyes on the sandwich, giving the boy the space to process the gesture. The air felt thin and expectant. Ethan waited, his posture relaxed, his hands held loosely at his sides. He did not look at the other children playing nearby. He watched only the sandwich, then tilted his head slightly, waiting for the silent figure to acknowledge the offering. Noah shifted. He looked at the half sandwich, then flicked his gaze up to meet Ethan's. The rigid line of his jaw softened instantly. His shoulders dropped away from his ears, the tension bleeding out of his frame with a long, quiet exhale. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the bread before he took it. He bit down, the crunch of the turkey and greens punctuating the sudden ease between them. Ethan reached back into his box, pulled out the crisp apple slices, and held them out. Noah took them, nodding once in a gesture that said everything. They sat side by side, the only sound the rhythmic chewing of their lunch. The minutes stretched, but the heavy pressure of the silence had vanished. Noah swallowed, turned his head toward the far end of the playground, and pointed a finger at a soccer ball resting near the chain-link fence. He looked at Ethan, his voice low but clear. "Do you play?" Ethan nodded, stood up, and brushed the crumbs from his lap. Noah rose to match him. They turned away from the bench and began to run toward the field together. The morning sun hit the school gate, casting long shadows across the pavement. Noah stood by the entrance, his eyes scanning the arriving crowd. He gripped the handle of his blue lunchbox so tightly his knuckles turned pale. When Ethan rounded the corner, Noah stepped forward, his pace quickening. He did not wait for the bell. He stopped directly in front of Ethan and set the box onto the concrete ledge. His fingers worked the latches, the metallic click echoing against the brick wall. He lifted the lid slowly, revealing 2 thick chocolate chip cookies resting inside. He picked one up and held it out, his hands steady. Ethan stopped mid-stride, looked at the treat, then looked at Noah. A smile broke across Noah's face, wide and unforced. Ethan took the cookie, and they walked toward the bench together. They sat down in the same spot from the day before, ignoring the rush of students around them. They ate in synchronized movements, laughing as crumbs fell onto their shoes. The empty space on the bench was gone, replaced by a steady, rhythmic, back and forth of shared food and conversation. It was no longer about hunger. It was about the simple weight of being known. The last crumbs were wiped from their palms. Ethan watched Noah tap the lid of the blue box, a small rhythmic sound against the metal bench. Around them, the schoolyard roared with the shouts of other games, but the space between the 2 boys remained quiet and anchored. They looked at the lunchbox, then at each other. It was no longer just a container for a midday meal. It had become a physical point of connection, a steady foundation they returned to every day. Noah leaned back, his heels drumming lightly against the gravel, mirroring Ethan's relaxed posture. The initial hesitation that had once defined their interactions had dissolved, leaving behind a rhythm of mutual trust. They stood up together, leaving the bench behind, but the connection remained. The lunchbox had bridged the gap between two separate lives, turning a solitary routine into a shared daily habit. They walked toward the classrooms as the bell rang, moving in sync. The bench sat empty, waiting for the next day, a silent witness to how a simple act of splitting a meal had built something that would last long after the final bell of the year faded away.